Welcome into NHL Tonight, first shift for a Wednesday, December the 4th, 2024. EJ Radic here alongside my buddy Stu Grimson. Good to have you back.
Good to be back. Always great to play your right
Being
wing.
here chit-chatting a little bit about hockey, which we like.
We love that.
But I do want to congratulate you. You have a little personal news. Your daughter just got engaged.
My youngest daughter,
Okay.
third daughter, but fourth of four children of mine. Yeah,
Wow.
she was, her boyfriend proposed to her, boyfriend Tyler of 4+ years proposed to her. So best Thanksgiving ever.
Ah,
Tyler Connolly made it so. Best
All
Thanksgiving ever. Boy, did we have a great time. There was a whole different buzz in the air.
All right, well.
And blew this young kid's socks off. Just knocked his socks off.
Big news. So
It really is.
congratulations
Thank
to
you,
you
sir.
and your
Thank you.
family, and all the best wishes to the young couple
Thank
as
you.
they move
Very
forward
sweet of you.
down the road to the big day, whenever
Yeah.
that comes in the next
Yeah,
year or so.
summer 26.
There you go.
We got some space.
You got some time.
We got some space.
Right after the Olympics. There you
That's
go.
right.
All right. Well, speaking of that, let's get to first things first here, and we
Yeah.
have news because the Four Nations tournament, they're announcing all the rosters today. Finland and Sweden, we have those rosters in the books. The U.S. and Canada will be later on TNT at 6:30. Sportsnet in Canada, TVA in Quebec, and it's interesting. We're going to look at Finland first.
Yeah.
And you can see Patrick Laine named to the team. He plays his first game in the league this year with the Montreal Canadiens. Big news, scores a goal. I mean, the Bell
Yeah.
Center's going crazy. Really nice for Patrick Laine. I'm a big fan of Patrick's. He came in the league with a lot of fanfare. He's a great player. He's had some personal issues that have kind of slowed him down, some injury issues, but he's back in time. You can see the snipe there against the Honors last night. So, we were wondering, talking to Juri Lehtinen with Finland, who's going to run that team, is Patrick Laine going to be back in time? Apparently, he is back in time, and he's on the team.
Yeah, and that's, last night's performance, first day back, first game back, trying to catch a moving train. He's been out of competition for the better part of a year each, right? So tricky injury, tricky situation.
Yeah,
Let's say it
for
better
sure.
that way, sorry.
Yeah.
And it's a really difficult thing for an athlete to kind of, ramp up and reintegrate. The rest of the field's got, they've hit the quarter mark already at this point. I was really encouraged to see how he looked last night, and the fact that, a guy like that who you look to for offense, he's able to contribute that in his first outing. One, that makes a difference to him personally. The organization, second, and I think you're breathing a sigh of relief if you're the Finnish decision makers sorting out this roster. Early signs that Laine looks like he could be vintage Laine would be a welcome add to this fantastic Four Nations.
And
tournament we're all talking
of
about.
all the teams, Stu, right? You could only pick from NHL players.
Yeah.
So the Finnish grouping is they have fewer to choose from because they have 40 players, I guess, somewhere in that area to choose from. So a player like Patrick Laine, who is a sniper that can score, who can make a difference on one shot, with a team that figures to be hard to play against because they're depth down the middle and they're strong in goal. So he could be a difference maker. I love their centers, though. You go through it, you have Barkov, you have Aho, you have Hintz, you have Lundell.
Yeah.
I mean, they're stacked through the middle of their team.
Yeah, and especially when you look at the top three, Barkov, Hintz, Aho, they possess a lot of offensive upside. These are guys that are a threat to score when they're out there. But what you like about them, and I think what forms somewhat of an advantage for the Finns in this respect is, I think they've probably got the complement of centers that are the best two-way centers, net at the end of the day. So you like that for the Finns, an area of strength without question. But you're right, it does put a healthy measure of emphasis on Laine being in the mix, but Laine being able to contribute in a way that we're accustomed to seeing him.
Yeah. Now, when you think about Team Finland, at least this group here, as we head into the Four Nations, when I look at their roster, to me, the biggest question is the depth on defense. They've named their 6D. Heiskanen, and I'm not worried about Heiskanen. Heiskanen and Lundell play together. I mean, those guys are high end. But after that, Hakanpää has dealt with a lot of injuries. He's just back. Big, lanky, right shot guy. Mikkola, I mean, they're going to lean on him a lot, I think, playing a Stanley Cup winner with the Florida Panthers. Olli Maatta, Ristolainen, Valimaki. I mean, it starts to get thinner back there. Those are obviously guys who are contributors to their NHL teams. Olli Maatta was part of Stanley Cup championship teams. But, I mean, this, when you look at the other countries, I mean, I think this group, it's thinner than some of the other countries, which means more pressure on those centers to be the 200-foot guys.
Right.
And also for the goalies to play well.
General observation, for the U.S. and the Canadians especially, you know, you're in a rather luxurious spot. What you can do as you're dressing out three pairs is you've got one guy who possesses, you know, certainly solid defensive skills as a defender, but comes with some offensive upside. You know, that's generally the way it's going to go for the Canadians and the U.S. And then that other player is somewhat of a safety valve. He's more tethered to the defensive side of the game. But where the Finns are concerned, after you get past Heiskanen, you don't have a lot of punch from the back end. And I think that is further maybe amplified because, again, we're talking about a Finnish roster that isn't as dangerous as the other rosters up front. So where does the scoring come from? That's a real challenge for the Finns. Being able to kind of button it down defensively and rely on Saros, you know, to be a difference maker is probably the recipe for a club like the Finns in my estimation.
Yeah, and another reason I think we go back to Laine is the important. They don't have a lot of right shot players on their team throughout. They only got 2 right shot defensemen. I do a count here. I think I see 2 maybe right shot forwards with Laine's teammate Armia, who's part of the mix. I figured they would add a guy like that because he's a veteran guy. He can move around your lineup a little bit, and so maybe he can help. Maybe he could take some faceoffs too, because that could be a bone of contention. I mean, all these guys are talented, but there's a lot of lefties on this lineup. We'll see. Jesperi Kotkaniemi did not make the cut from Carolina. I was a little surprised at that. But, you know, altogether at the end of the day for the Finns, I'm not worried. They're going to compete and be hard to play against because they got some high-end players through important parts of their lineup. Let's go to Sweden now.
Sure thing.
And, you know, the Swedes, I'll start on defense with Sweden because here's a look at, you know, they already had named Erik Karlsson and Victor Hedman. Okay. But Gustav Forsling, one of my favorite guys to watch in this league. I just think he gets better and better and better. I'm not worried about him. But it's a good group as well. Rasmus Andersson doesn't get near enough attention out in Calgary. Rasmus Dahlin, a high-end player with the Buffalo Sabres. Matthias Ekholm, you had him in Nashville all those years. You know what he's about. And Jonas Brodin, another guy that nobody talks about. He just goes and helps you win night after night in Minnesota. This is a sturdy group.
It really is. I mean, you look at, you know, all 3 legs of the stool, and there's a lot to like in the Swedish group without question. You know, as we compare them to the Finns, EJ, I think there's a lot more pop, a lot more sizzle up front. You got some guys that are really game breakers. And 2, comparing them to the other Scandinavian nation, at the blue line especially, you know, again, there's
more depth,
more offensive,
and there's
upside,
more jump.
No question about it. There's a lot more get up in the attack. You look at a guy like Matthias Ekholm. He closes gap like nobody in the business right now. Really a solid defender, but the part that goes unappreciated is his offensive upside. He's up in the attack. He's very judicious about the way he activates. But he's got some great offensive instincts that often get overlooked.
Yeah, and
in a short tournament, that could bode well for you.
Yeah, and Forsling, again, I can't say it enough. I just love watching that guy play. I think this is going to be just another coming out party for him at this best-on-best elite level. And we talk about the forwards there. It was interesting because I think they lean towards, you know, when push came to shove, I think they leaned towards some veterans in their group. I mean, they brought Arvidsson back in. Lindholm hasn't had a great season in Boston so far, but he's part of the mix there. They did bring in Leo Carlsson, who, I mean, they've taken a little chance there, but like he's going to be a high-end player in this league. He's just a young player. I thought William Eklund from San Jose could have been a part of this mix, but they might look at him and say, you know what, maybe we'll have him at the World Championships and we'll evaluate him there. And then we'll make a decision moving forward. Mika Zibanejad, it's been a struggle for him this year. So again, you know, there's some interesting pieces here and guys that have been really good players at different points of their career. But I do think there's some question marks there. And I'll be really interested to watch William Nylander because that guy loves the big stage.
He does.
And so they're going to probably be leaning on him in big moments, I think, to come up with some really important plays.
I think they push him a lot of responsibility without question. I think, you know, the challenge will be, is there carryover in Zibanejad's game from the pro circuit, the NHL circuit to this point? It's been an up and down year for him so far, more down than up. But is he able to kind of park that experience and maybe even, use this as a way to rehab his game in North America, really kind of catch some lightning in a bottle here and put a different trajectory on this year? Failing that, I think the Swedes are going to have to spot him in a slot where he maybe doesn't get exposed if he can't kind of recapture that Zibanejad form.
I'd be remiss if we didn't mention the goalies, Finland and Sweden. For the Finns, Saros is the starter, and then you've got UPL and you got Lankinen, and for the Swedes, it's Gustafsson, it's Markstrom, it's Ullmark. Let me ask you about that. I mean, Saros is going to play for Finland. Now he's going to be the starter. We'll see where it goes from there. Maybe Lankinen, maybe UPL gets an opportunity. But for the Swedes, which one of these, like right now, based on performance, Gustafsson's the guy.
Yeah, I think so.
From Minnesota.
Yeah, he's played fabulous. He really has. I think, comparing the other two, you look at the body of work
More
that
experienced.
Markstrom's had over his career. There's been some really brilliant, especially going back to his days in Calgary, there have been some brilliant seasons that Markstrom has had. But I think it's one of those situations.
And Ullmark, too, by the way. That's the trophy winner.
Let's not mark Ullmark. Yeah. I mean, a real strength where the Swedes are concerned. I think you're going to be in a situation where the coaching staff is going to have to play a hunch. You'll take some cues from the goaltending staff specifically, but what's it look like? Assuming Gustafsson is your starter, what's that first start look like? And if it looks like it's his net to lose, he might run the table on the tournament.
Yeah, because it's short. It's 3 games, and then there's a championship game, and that's it.
Yeah.
So it's not an elongated kind of process. So
and do we get a kind of a look at the schedule? Is it a day off in between?
Yeah, there's
games
some days
typically?
in there. Yep.
Yeah,
some days.
So that bodes for one goaltender could really retain the net for the entire short tournament. Should he kind of demonstrate that in the early going?
Yeah. So it's over 12 days, and each team will play. I mean, you could play 4 games if you go to the championship game. So it'll be interesting to see. Now, Team USA and Team Canada, that will be tonight. They'll announce those full rosters, 6:30 on TNT here in the States, Sportsnet and TVA in Canada. And it's going to be interesting to see which way these teams go. Canada, their first 6 guys, we go back to who they announced earlier. Crosby, McKinnon, Marchand, McDavid, Point, Makar. Not bad. That was it's a good starting point.
Potential
I think you're going to be all right
Potential.
for those guys. But like the big news, or the big discussion with Canada, I mean, Canada's loaded with great options, right? But the goaltending, I mean, there's no, like last 10 years or so, whatever, it was Carey Price, or in these previous best on best, Carey Price, before that, Luongo, Brodeur. They had those guys that you knew they were going to lean on.
Yeah.
Now there's nobody that's really obvious. For me, it would be Adin Hill, because he's got a Stanley Cup in his bag. He's been playing really well of late. You can see the numbers there, but here are the other options. I mean, they got some Logan Thompson. Having a hell of a start. Jordan Binnington, another guy with a Stanley Cup. And, his numbers are a little deceptive because he's playing on a team that's had some ups and downs. Yeah. Montembeault has had some ups and downs in Montreal, and you can see there Blackwood and San Jose. So it'll be interesting to see which way it goes. But for me, Hill would be the guy. I think those first 3 are probably the guys I go with, but Hill would be my starter.
Yeah, I'd probably opt for Logan Thompson just based on what I've seen from Thompson, and really has been brilliant. And a real, a wonderful surprise, the Washington Capitals along with all that. But Thompson, for me, I think would get the start. It's just a hunch more than anything. I will say this. When you dress out a roster like the Canadians will, the fact that you're dealing with a rather, how should we call it? It's maybe somewhat of a vacuum internationally where goaltending is concerned, where Canada in the international scene is concerned. It minimizes to some degree. Yeah. You don't need somebody to come in there and rob a game for you.
Usually that's not the case.
You've got McKinnon. Sorry, you've got McDavid, Crosby, McKinnon kind of down the middle, Braden Point down the middle. You've got some depth that
Makar on defense.
I just don't think you're really
several others.
You don't need anybody to come in and play .950 hockey for you from that position.
I mean, it reminds me of going back, in my World Junior history back, I think it was 06 or 05 or 06, Canada had these great World Junior teams. And Justin Pogge ended up being the goalie for Canada. And he played outstanding. He had unbelievable numbers. He never really found his way in the National Hockey League. But, like, they were so strong that you just have to be good. And Adin Hill is more than good. He's won a Stanley Cup, and watch it again last night, a 1-0 victory over Edmonton. He was terrific in the third period. So we'll see which way Canada decides to go there with the goaltending. One guy that will not be a part of the mix is Tyler Seguin, because we got some terrible news today. I mean, for me, I just really like Tyler Seguin. I got to chat with him over in Finland. I've known him throughout his career. He's just one of those guys, a nice, likable guy. Here's a note from Jim Nill announcing today that Seguin will undergo surgery on Thursday. That's tomorrow, December the 5th, to repair left side FAI and the left side hip labrum. Expected to miss 4 to 6 months. Surgery will be performed in New York City. So we wish Tyler Seguin nothing but the best. He's off to a great start this season on that line with Duchesne and Marchment, and they are going to really miss him. I mean, he's basically out for the season. Maybe you go all the way to the end. I think it would be hard-pressed to get him back in on that timeline. You see all the injuries he's had. Just feel so bad for Tyler because, I mean, this is a terrific player and playing well right now, and he's had so many injuries to battle
with. And you know what I liked? I mean, I echo your sentiments. We wish all players nothing but, the best in health. And you hate to think that, here again, later in his career, having to go through something rather significant. Pekka Rinne, I think, went through this very same repair on the labrum of his hip. It can be a bit tricky. But, Tyler Seguin, and you really thought he had the injuries behind him. The last 2 years, and this has been an important part of the success and the resurgence of the Dallas Stars, they dress out one of the best second lines in the game today. Tyler Seguin's been very productive and a great fit with Mason Marchment on.
And Matt Duchesne.
Flanked by Matt Duchesne.
That's been a great. Those guys have been as good as any line in the league this year.
Without question. Real credit for Jim Nill to pull in a couple of players externally to dress out a line with Tyler Seguin, and then Seguin, again putting the injuries behind him, but getting the responsibility and being as productive as he has. The chemistry of those three has been electric, and that's a real setback for the Dallas Stars. I think it puts them in a somewhat different light looking forward. They'll be pressed to kind of replace that kind of contribution.
Good note from Bryce, our researcher, that line 5-on-5, they've outscored their opponents 14-6 this year. So it just shows you the impact they've had, and Duchesne has been brilliant. Marchment's been good. Seguin. So Tyler, good luck with the surgery.
Get well, my friend.
Nothing but the best. You're one of the great guys in this league, and hopefully you'll get back playing, hopefully next season, if not even this year. We'll see how the recovery goes. The Stars are taking on the LA Kings tonight. That's a good matchup out west. I had one more note on Team Canada with their group, and when we think about who they're going to end up with, right? The John Cooper's coaching the team. There's been a lot of reports about different guys. Cirelli and Hagel are two interesting guys because Canada has so many choices, right?
Yeah.
I feel like at the end of the day, and this is true of all these teams really, especially U.S., Canada, Sweden, is that are you picking the very best players, or do you want some pieces that can handle different parts of the game when you need that?
Yeah, which, if that's part of the consideration, if that's part of the decision-making process, I think that favors an Anthony Cirelli, in my estimation. He's got plenty of offensive upside, but this is a guy that can play and provide important minutes for you in specialized situations. Fabulous penalty killer. Really strong defensive zone face-offs. He's a titan inside the circle. So I think a Cirelli, especially given that Cooper sees him night in, night out.
He's an advocate.
There's a bit of a bounce there for Cirelli. And, for me, I like a guy like that in the roster, because there's going to be, even in a short tournament, in international competition, it's hockey at the end of the day. There's a little grit involved nonetheless.
Yeah, because it's an interesting question for teams that have all those great players to choose from. There's pieces, and you're trying to make them all fit to a winning puzzle. Let's talk about Team USA a little bit because, we know the first 6 they have named, and again, Eichel, Matthew Tkachuk, Adam Fox, Quinn Hughes, Charlie McAvoy. Not so bad to start with those guys. But, when you think about Team USA, they got a wealth in goal.
Yeah.
With Hellebuyck, I would think he'd be the starter. Ottinger's there. Swayman is there. If you go deeper than that, you got a John Gibson who was a star at the World Juniors in 2013, won a gold medal, was terrific in that tournament, and has been great for Anaheim and starting to find his way again. I mean, there's a lot of options, but I would think that Hellebuyck is going to be where it begins and may end.
Yeah, I and the interesting thing is, I think, just given the body of work for a Hellebuyck, given the season he's having right at this moment, he's your odds-on favorite to be your number one, and again, to trot him out there, barring injury or a dip in performance, trot him out there for the entire tournament. But pull Hellebuyck out of the mix, and the focus really shifts to Ottinger and Swayman. That's still a really stout tandem.
Yeah.
That's a really stout tandem. And I think you shade towards Ottinger as you kind of compare and contrast those two, the way their careers and years have gone to this point. Ottinger's a really nice option if that's your
I mean, have those
are your choices absent to Hellebuyck.
To have those three guys, then have others.
It's an embarrassment of riches at that position.
Yeah, and we haven't talked about Anthony Stolarz is playing well this year, and Joey Daccord, the man of many passports apparently, because he's an American, but he has the ability. He can get they're talking about the Canadian goaltenders, and they were thinking there's been a lot of discussion about Joey Daccord maybe play for Canada.
Right.
He hasn't committed anywhere. This is not a tournament that's an IIHF tournament, so he could actually play without any. I don't think this would impact, but he doesn't have a Canadian passport, so that he can't be named for Team Canada. But if he got one and somebody got hurt, and then with the Olympics, I think the Swiss are interested in him as well, because I believe his mother is from Switzerland. So I mean, he is the man of many options here.
Yeah,
but we'll see how it plays out for him. When I think about this team, I mean, there's guys who are obviously going to be on Team USA. They're like Canada. They have a number of high-end guys. There's one guy in particular, I'll be curious if he's on the roster. For me, I'm rooting for him, is Clayton Keller from the Utah Hockey Club.
Yeah.
Because I just think this guy is a really talented player that, he's been in Arizona. There's been all these struggles. Utah, obviously, it's a way better situation this year. But, you can see all these different appearances. He's been a part of Team USA. And I watch him, and I know people will say, it's the All-Star game. What does it matter? It's totally different. But the chemistry that he has with Austin Matthews from Arizona, when Matthews lives down there, they've skated together a bunch. And with some of these other high-end American-born players, I think he could be one of those guys. You name him as your 13th forward, and he finds his way into really important parts of your team. So we'll see if they go that way. They have a lot of options, but I would love to see Clayton get that opportunity.
I think he's been maybe 10% south of his best game this
year
so far.
Yeah.
But saw him play, covering the Blackhawks last year, saw him play a couple of times as they took on Arizona. And I'll tell you what, you're just left with the impression as you evaluate that club, which is now UHC, the Utah Hockey Club, Keller is the man. Keller is the man. He really drives it out there. He's a difference maker. And, he's a guy, he just keeps plays alive, really creative, really drives a line. For me, I have a similar interest, but at the defense position. Okay. Brock Faber is not somebody that's been buttoned down. He wasn't part of the early announcements, but for me, makes great sense given what we've seen from Faber so far.
He's been terrific.
Thrust into a situation as a rookie where he took down big minutes, EJ. I think he averaged, TOI last year was north of 26 after Spurgeon went down last year, and he really looked solid. For a young guy, and players will tell you, I think the defense position might be as challenging as any of them, because it's the pace of the game coming at you, and you're trying to parry that, you're trying to process that, you're trying to shut down an attack, and you're trying to transition your own attack. It's a real challenge. Faber looked like he fell out of bed doing it, or prepared to do it, and has some experience at the international level.
Played the Olympics.
2 World Junior tournaments. And the Olympics.
22 Olympics when the pros did not, for the most part, it wasn't a best on best.
So bodes well for Brock Faber. I think he's a guy that's really skilled on both sides of the puck. He's brilliant as a shutdown, really defensively responsible, and he's proven to us. There was an argument to be made for Brock Faber winning the Calder last year. Connor ultimately wins out. But I think Faber will be a guy that gets due consideration. He might just slide in there.
And he's got one other thing going for him. His general manager is the general manager at Team USA, Billy
good to
Guerin.
know people.
So
it's good to know
it's
people.
always good to have friends.
Yeah. I know that's how you got hired.
It's the only way. It's the only way, Stu. Come on. I mean, you know better than me. But at any rate, it'll be interesting. So again, 6:30 tonight on TNT in the States, 6:30 Sportsnet TVR in Canada. The announcements for Team USA and Team Canada for the upcoming Four Nations tournament, which will be in February. When we come back, it was an emotional night in Calgary last night as the Flames and the Blue Jackets got together. There's Guy Gaudreau, Johnny's dad, there after the game. We'll talk about what a night in Calgary. That's next on First Shift. So it was an emotional night, Stu, last night in Calgary as the Blue Jackets and Flames met for the second time, the first time in Calgary, and the Flames honoring their former star, Johnny Gaudreau, honoring the Gaudreau family. Obviously, we know the story of Johnny and Matthew, Guy Gaudreau and his wife Jane, Johnny's wife Meredith, the family there. You can see Guy Gaudreau. Every time I see Guy Gaudreau and all these things, it just rips at me.
Yeah.
Because being a father, having a family, and to have, this is unthinkable and unspeakable what happened to their family. And you can see this is after the game. They announced Johnny Gaudreau as the #1 star, and he's out there with a couple of the Flames, Rasmus Anderson there, and Michael Backlund. And I thought it was a beautiful night. The Flames and the Blue Jackets. The second meeting, they played on November the 29th in Columbus. There's been many of these evenings so far. Sadly, they're honoring, keeping that legend, helping the family, really.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing. So it was something to see, but it's, like I said, every time I see Guy, who I have met before and talked to him at the old Hollydale ice rink down there in South Jersey where he raised his family and everything, and he's on the ice with the guys in Calgary, and he's been on the ice with the Blue Jackets and the Flyers at different points this year. It just rips at me.
I came away with this impression last night. I have the utmost respect for Johnny and Matthew's parents, and of course their the rest of their immediate family, their widows, their wives especially, because it's got to be really hard to have yet another. It's the equivalent of yet another celebration of their life, another funeral to some degree, and it conjures up all those emotions all over you again. You're left wanting for the family. Let's just give them the space to move on. But I gained so much respect. As I understand it, it was Meredith, I think, that really was kind of prompting this, maybe is the best word, to allow the Flames to have a celebration as well, a tribute, because Johnny, of course, spent the best days of his career, 8 years in Calgary, where he really forged an impressive NHL career. So to allow that club and that fan base who adored the young athlete to just pay their respects, I thought that was really a gracious and a respectful, just a large thing that the family did, to the fans in that fan base. And two, it's always interesting to see, Columbus put their stamp on it. I thought Calgary did a fabulous job of just kind of remembering Johnny, not so much the accomplishment, the contribution he made to the club on the ice, but in the community as well. There was one moment, EJ, I think you caught it as well, but I thought the thing that really stood out to me, George Canyon is the anthem singer to the Flames, and he did this wonderful acoustic guitar a cappella rendition of Johnny Be Good, the old Chuck Berry tune, and it was just so sweet. It was so on point, and it just was really a solemn, somber moment. I thought it was just a perfect tone for everything the Flames accomplished or put together on this particular night. It was really well done.
It's really difficult, I would imagine, not having to have done these type of things in my life, but I would imagine for both the Blue Jackets and for the Flames and for the National Hockey League to find the right tone and tenor and be supportive. We talk about a lot, hockey as a family, and it really is. You come up through those small rinks. Like I said, I had that opportunity to talk to Guy Gaudreau at the old Hollydale ice rink, in his little office there. And you live in those places, and people really bond in those places, and it goes all the way up to the highest levels. And it's been wonderful to see the support that the family has had from the hockey community, from the league, from the Blue Jackets, and from the Flames. And I thought both organizations have done an unbelievable job in a very, very difficult situation.
If I could just pay a little attention to, and I could speak to this, the wives community, you really are encouraged and heartened to know that's as close-knit a community as there is in the NHL fabric. And wonderful to know that for folks like Meredith, she's got a support system for life that will be alongside her, because these are difficult times, and having those familiar relationships, maintain that connection. It's critical to really processing, getting through this, and ultimately carrying loss like that through your life.
Yeah, no question. So great job by the Flames. The team's wearing those number 13 jerseys in the warm-up, and let's face it, we're going to have continuing to think about Johnny and Matthew Gaudreau and the Gaudreau family as we move through this season and many seasons to come, because they've really touched us in so many ways in this game. We're going to take a break right here on First Shift. When we come back, our buddy Steve Kouleas will step in to talk a little bit about some of the young scoring stars around the National Hockey League. That's next on First Take. Let's take a look at the goal leaders in the National Hockey League this season, and Sam Reinhart continuing to light it up. Leon Draisaitl, Braden Point, Cole Caulfield, and Kirill the Thrill, who had the overtime winner for the Wild against Vancouver last night. And with that, let's bring in from NHL Network Radio and the master, I always call him the master of the discussion room, Steve Kouleas. Steve, we've got some new faces on the leaderboard these days, whether in terms of points, in terms of goals. I mean, we're seeing some new blood.
And we love that, because in our generation, it was Wayne, other than the tie with Dion, he wins 10. He's not even in your hockey pool. Mario 6, Yager 5, and McDavid's already won 5. Can you believe that?
Yeah.
He's going to turn 28 in January. He's already won 5 Art Ross trophies. And to have the Kaprizovs, the Natchises, the Jack Eichel, Jesper Bratt, boy, a 6th-round pick. What a story he's been. All these guys projected to be 120 and more. It's good to get some fresh blood. Some of the analytics, they start crunching numbers and shooting percent. It can get too complicated. But the chase would be Matthews realistically not worrying about 50 under Berube's system, not about me, about we, and maybe somebody else would win. Like, he's out of the Rocket, one would think, right, Stu?
One would think, pretty good gap at this point, and a 9-game layoff for Matthews. So I'm with you on that. Back to Art Ross just briefly. I hearken back to maybe it was around the quarter pole last year, but Connor McDavid seemed to have spotted the rest of the field a pretty good margin, and then closed that to make it an interesting 3-horse race, almost really like down to the last couple of games. I'm all with you on the new faces, but with 8 points of separation, what are your prospects on Connor, and maybe connected to that, the way the Oil are playing these days, because that obviously factors into it. Cool.
Yeah, if they don't play Bruce Cassidy's 5 box plus 1, the dice that really shut down the Oilers yesterday, and I know you guys have talked about that. So for the most part, it's all, when it's that tight, it's McDavid. If I had to put money on it, right, EJ, it would probably be McDavid.
Yeah.
Scoring goals is harder, and the Leafs have a new system. Matthews has had injury issues, so that's McDavid's gap and Matthews's gap. It's a little different. Do I really believe that McDavid will come back healthy and win the Art Ross again? Yeah, I put money on that. But it is fun to see Kaprizov, give him some love. I challenge Jack Eichel, EJ, to say, you know what, why not 100 points for you for the first time in your career? And some of the other guys that are in. And even if they don't win it, if Dylan Strome were to tickle 99 or 100 points, it's just fun to see Remember we had 0 50s and 0 100s,
Yeah,
EJ?
yeah.
This is fun.
What was it? It was the 1 year we had it was 86 points with Amy Benn and John Tavares, I think it was.
I think that goes back to 2015.
Somewhere in there,
and
yeah.
Ben won it on the last game. It was against my Nashville Predators. I was covering them.
There you go.
And I think you're right. It was like 87 points to win the Art Ross that year.
And I'll give another shout out just before we get on to the next thing for Sam Reinhart, because 57 last year. He's already leading the league in goals this year. He scores on the power play. He scores shorthanded. I think he scores in his sleep. He's just a pretty amazing goal scorer. So continuing to do well in Florida. Let me ask you about the Sharks, because we touched on this yesterday, or excuse me, on Monday, Coolies, that the Sharks, they had that terrible start, 0-7-2. Celebrini missed a bunch of time, played in game one, then missed a bunch of time. But I got to see them recently. They had another nice win against the Washington Capitals, scoring in overtime. William Eklund, who I think could have been on Team Sweden. The team is playing much better, much more fun to watch, scoring a bunch of goals. How about the Sharks?
I'm flabbergasted.
Yeah.
You threw out the numbers. When they started the way they did, I felt sorry for Celebrini and Wrzowski. Celebrini, as you mentioned in the first game. But since then, 7-5-4 is a mini parade. I'm not saying that it's not safe to go back in the water. I'm not ready to play the Jaws music yet. But they're fun. They give the three of us a reason to keep these bags under our eyes when we stay up to watch them. Like Celebrini's almost at a point per game, and he's so noticeable. It's easy to say Celebrini's been better in this sample size than Connor Bedard has been so far this year for whatever reason. And to be tickling in and around NHL 500 with that start, and the way they 7-5-4 with them in the lineup, so he deserves love. The Swedish and Finn players you talked about who've contributed in overtime deserve love. And Mackenzie Blackwood, 909 on that team pending UFA, as Gino Reda taught me. Sazic, cha-ching, cha-ching, when he gets paid or gets traded, gentlemen. A few teams need a goalie, as you know, EJ.
Cools, we had Will Smith and Celebrini on NHL Now just a couple of weeks ago. Both brilliant, bright kids, really wonderful young men. They pointed to a couple of different aspects of this roster, and I'll mention Tyler Toffoli specifically, because I think Celebrini's actually living with Tyler Toffoli, if Will Smith isn't, or it might be the other way around.
Toffoli has 10 goals.
And Toffoli's playing well as well. But you ask them about the guys that have really been instrumental in helping them transition to, the highest level the game is played. They point to Tyler Toffoli. That's a key aspect of this roster, just in terms of, being that example, being that person that's there to kind of help shepherd these guys to life in the pro circuit.
That's so important. If we go way back since we talked about Art Ross and Waynes, it was the Lee Fogolin factor. You can't let the Oilers boys on the bus run around as 21 and 22-year-olds. So there's no Logan Couture, and we'll probably never see him again. And Toffoli can still contribute and snipe. We talked about that first game with Celebrini. What a play, Toffoli and Celebrini. That was a beautiful goal. And Toffoli's goal yesterday. So you need the layers of the 30-somethings, which is old in the NHL. The average age 27. And then you get down to the kids, or as you alluded to, the two teenagers. So that's important for not just right now. If you're going to win, you want to win at home. You want to give the fans something to come, and celebrate, like Joe Thornton and the young players, but also to kind of see a path to the future. And I got to give Mike Grier credit for that. The Askarov trade was big. He's got Blackwood to play with, whatever he wants to do, and some other pieces like the kids, whoever they were living with, right? Smith and Celebrini. So it's fun. It could have been an unmade disaster, but at least it's fun here to start the year heading into Christmas.
All right, Cooley, let's get to these goalies, because, you mentioned, you bring up Blackwood, right? And you want to talk about the Avalanche today. Now, they rallied to beat Buffalo. They were down 4-0. They scored 5 goals. Usually that's not going to happen. The goaltending has been up. It's been down. It's been all over for Colorado. You're saying maybe it's time to investigate a change. Maybe Blackwood is one of those guys you look at.
I think they're having these. I think they're watching this and they're like, "Yeah, that's good. I was going to watch EJ and Stewie anyway." So since we're having a discussion room, like James Reimer, we talked Kevin Lankinen and EJ, did we not 2 weeks ago, where the Canucks would be without him? He saved their. Arthur Sheloffs couldn't have done this.
Yeah.
So I scoured the American League. I looked at different. Devin Cooley's doing well. I looked at teams that have 3 goalies, like Pittsburgh, like Buffalo, like Detroit, that are kind of all not going anywhere anyway. Maybe that's a springboard for a trade. Reimer was available on waivers, so he moved. And I'm not saying someone to be a savior. Yeah. I'm saying someone to be better than 4 goals on 8 shots. The Avalanche would have been better yesterday to play the game with 6 attackers. And they came back and won anyway. So Wedgwood did his job because they moved off Eustace Onnen, of course, in that trade with Nashville. But this has gone on too long. The numbers were hitting last year because they kept on winning. This year, their record is still good, but the goal at 867, Stu.
Yeah, rough.
The players know first, I was taught. Yeah. And the players know, and they know first.
Yeah, when you're starting to experience that collective sag on the bench, when yet another softie hits the back of the net, it just erodes club confidence. But if not Georgiev, maybe a 2-part question, Cooley. Who is somebody that could step in and really you're assuming the de facto number 1 role if you're going to set Georgiev to the side, but who is that in your estimation if you've had a chance to kind of review the options out there? Number 1, and is Georgiev a part of an asset that you jettison out of the organization at the same time, or is he your backup?
Well, I think his value is so low. Sometimes we need the reset, right? Like Tristan Jarry went through the reset. So if they like Blomqvist in Pittsburgh, Jarry has a lot of money. Are they going to retain and move off him? Then you got Nedeljkovic. You got 3 goalies, maybe Alex Lyon or Husso at a lower cost. Or do you just bite the bullet and go right to Cam Talbot? He's older, but the money's doable. I'm trying to be realistic. Reimer would have been doable. Obviously, Lankinen, if they knew the goaltending was going to be atrocious at the start of the year, they would have gone to him. I mean, Dustin Tokarski just got signed because they didn't think Spencer Martin could do the job in Carolina. So they went to the Chicago Wolves. I went through every AHL roster to look at goalies there and try to see if there was a connection of teams that already had 2 above. And Sebastian Costa is coming up for Detroit. So they might have 4 EJ, which means 1 could be there via trade. I would explore something like that to get through the next little while. I know it's hard with the cap and everything else, but if they were to finish very badly and somehow miss the playoffs, I don't think they will. And it's goaltending at 867. Be forewarned, my friends.
Yeah,
be forewarned.
No, you're right about that. Maybe Scott Wedgwood can come in there and help him. He's a veteran guy, and I don't know if he's the long-term answer, but maybe in the short term can get them back on track. We will see. Cooley, thanks for the time today, buddy. There's a lot to discuss. Nope, he's got hold on. We got the light. You have a pick? What do you got?
Steve Stamkos returns home, tough season, but he scores.
Okay, in Toronto tonight against the Leafs. Yes. There it is. Okay. Yes. I'm glad the batteries are still working. All right, Cooley, go do your thing. Good to talk to you, buddy. Coming up next, we get to our parlay. We hit it last week. Is JD going to do it again? That's next on First Shift. It's time for the Top Line Parlay presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. And joining us now is our quarterback, our leader, and our friend, our producer, JD Lindbergh, who was hot last week. He gave us a winner last week on the Top Line Parlay. What do you have this week?
All right, blind squirrels, broken clocks. It was bound to happen eventually, right?
Okay.
Right,
I didn't say it. You said it.
Usual disclaimers aside.
You were very nice to me coming off a win here. Let's see if we can back it up with another one. Let's hit the full screen here. We go. 3 legs tonight, starting off with Toronto. First period under for the Leafs, and check out this graphic here about the Leafs. Their goals by period here. They don't score quite as much in the first period. Cole was telling us he likes Stamkos to score a goal. We just need to get through the first period with no Leafs goals, so we like the Leafs under 0.5 goals in the first period. Back to our picks here. Bruins, you knew I would go there. I like the first period puck line for the Bees. I like them to have a lead after 1 here. Check this out. The Bruins, they beat up on bad teams. Sorry, Chicago, but it is what it is. The record is what you say you are, or something like that. Bill Parcells said it once. You know? But check it out. The Bruins are much better against teams below 500. They've been playing well under Joe Sacco, so hopefully they keep that rolling, at least through the first period here.
Second of a back-to-back.
That's true. That's true.
Yep.
Overtime last night at home against Detroit.
All right,
so
what do you got?
Travel.
What's the third one?
All right, final one out west. LA Kings, first period puck line. We're getting back to the pick here. Here we go.
There you go.
Yep. So I also like the LA Kings to lead after 1. They're dynamite at home. Check out these numbers. So 8-2-1 on home ice.
Wow.
They score the lights out. Dallas, tough blow losing Sagan today, so we like the Kings to take it to the locker room after one with a lead. Gentlemen, what do we think?
Well, I like that you bring good statistical data to the table to back your picks, and you are coming off a victory last week.
So he gets you think he gets a little deference there?
Yeah,
Is that what you're
I'm
suggesting?
not. I do think, though, I don't know if that Nashville-Toronto game be a little worrisome for me. Toronto Maple Leafs, they're back at home. They might get on the board in the first period. So that's the one that bothers me. What do you think?
I'm kind of focused on the Kings-Stars game. What do you got for a starter in that one? That would starting goaltenders in that one.
Yeah.
If you
I probably
know.
should have checked that. Yeah,
That's
hang
all
on.
right.
Let me look it up real quick here.
That would.
Yeah, these are things
That's the only thing that might cast that piece of your parlay in a different light for me.
Yeah.
For me.
Projected as Ottinger against Riddick, thanks to our
Ottinger
good friends at
versus
Left Wing
Riddick
Lock.
has been good this year.
Stars, and as we we talked about earlier in our broadcast, without Tyler Sagan, there's going to be some kind of repositioning there. So may look okay for you. JD, may look okay for you at the end of the day.
He won last week, so we're rooting for you. And I know the first shifters out there are rooting for you. The shifties are rooting for you as well.
We like that.
But go get them, JD. All right, when we come back, there's 4 games on the slate tonight. We'll talk about that Leafs-Preds game next on First Shift.
DraftKings Sportsbook is an official sports betting partner of the NHL. And this week, new customers can bet $5 and pocket $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins. Download the app and use promo code FLY when you sign up. DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours.
Here's a look at the schedule for Wednesday evening. 4 games on the docket: Nashville, Toronto, Boston, and Chicago, Vegas, and Anaheim, and Dallas, and LA. We've got a tweet here from Brooks Bratton from the Nashville Predators, and it's interesting. This UC Saros and Justus Annunen are now on the same team.
A pair of
teammates.
tendies.
Now Annunen is 6'4". And Saros is 5'11". Here it is. Following up, and it's about the nicknames. UC Saros on the nickname situation. We'll see if there's going to be any new nicknames, but at least for the first game, he was Big Juice, and I was Little Juice. They're both nicknames Juice.
Yeah.
So interesting there, but makes sense because Saros is
makes perfect sense.
the littler
Yeah.
of the two individuals.
Yeah, 6'4", 180, I think goes the Big
Annunen,
Juice,
yeah.
the Big Juice Eustace.
Yeah.
So that makes perfect sense. But
He could have been nasty. He could have said, "Your nickname is now the backup," and that would have been nasty, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You love that. The color within the locker room. It's the stuff that that kind of lightens the day, breaks the routine.
Yes. Speaking of that, from the Who Cares department, happy 60th anniversary to Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
Oh,
60
yeah?
years ago today.
Who
I like to
knew?
get in this silly stuff at the end of the show, but
Who
that's
knew?
it. I knew. I
Way to go, Rudy. Way to go, Rudy. Good
there
for you.
Go.
Good for
NHL
you.
Now is coming up next. Rupper, Dano, and Lauren Gardner. We'll see you tomorrow, everybody.